We've talked about the overarching goals for your units and also the assessment tasks and the toolbox of language structures and resources that are needed for the unit by terms of your overarching goals. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about the lesson plans and the objectives that you have for teaching the individual language pieces, and also how you make sure that you're giving students an opportunity to assess, to practice all three of the modes of communication so that they're ready for their performance assessment.
So answering the question about how to practice all the three modes in the units, well, the task, I think it relates also to tasks that we assign. So the tasks are the guide, so that we are able to apply the interpretive and presentational and interpersonal mode. So in our case, in fact, we started with, we want students to be able to comprehend an actual and authentic text. And therefore, the task that we assigned was this comprehension check. And then we moved to the presentational, where we wanted the students to to put their hands on and produce, and being able to produce something based on what we were doing in class, so through the video clips. And then also through the interpersonal, when the student had to debate and to defend and criticize each other videos. So I think really what you have in mind, what your goal is, drives back to what you then have, what you ask the student to do in class, and so that the three modes are applied. And as in terms of deciding how long it takes, for example, within a unit, in our cases, we understood that, again, the presentational task was the most time-consuming part. And this is why we devoted most of the days that we assigned to the whole unit, so nearly 6 days. And the modalities too. So in order to, the modalities in which the tasks were performed also changed, according to the task. So for example, for the presentational task, they would work both in class and at home and in the lab, while the interpersonal task was carried out only in the laboratory. And so that was also a variety, let's say, in which the students could change environment, and it was adjusted to what the final result we wanted to obtain. So the other part in the lesson plans that make us sure that we practice all the three modes is by showing also the modeling that we tried to incorporate in each of the tasks. So, for example, for the interpersonal mode, we thought of show them two instructors, so a video where the two instructors model the kind of debate that we want them to do at the end, so as a final product. And so the whole cycling of showing the modeling, having them practice, and then perform, and then receiving feedback constantly. So this all cyclical approach allows in each lesson plans to reach the objectives that you want.
In my unit, I tend to have an ongoing assessment that goes with the unit since the beginning until the end. So what I'm doing, I have checks, and I check each time for comprehensibility. I model my instructions so that I can adjust my instruction whenever I feel like my student didn't really understand what I want them to do. And at the same time, by giving them constructive feedback and by getting feedback from their peers, they get to improve what they are working at, so that they can have an amazing output at the end.
When planning lessons as language teachers, we need to be very flexible in our thinking and respond accordingly based on the needs of our students. I feel like every day there's some sort of formative assessment to check in with where the students are at, even if it's your 5-finger test or 10 fingers. Tell me how much you understood, how much you comprehended. In the beginning of a unit, students, they must hear the language and get that comprehensible input in order to be able to produce it. At each step, the interpretive, presentational, and the interpersonal, there needs to be a formative assessment going on at all times.
Mm-hmm. I was wondering, with your lesson planning, we talk about the 3 different modes, and sometimes I feel like we separate those out instead of the integrated piece. Mm-hmm. But with your lesson plans for a day and for a week, do you think in terms of today's lesson is going to be all about interpretive, or do you think more in terms of today's lesson I have to make sure that I'm working on interpretive and the building to presentational and interpersonal within a lesson plan or over a course of a week? How does that fit into your thinking?
I think they all come together. So when I plan lessons, I think about what's the goal I really want them to achieve, mm-hmm. instead of thinking separately. Yeah, that's how I plan my lesson too.
I think it also goes on variety. You need variety in the classroom. Especially with today's students, so span of attention is it's not very, very, very long, very big. So the fact that you alternate, and as long as you provide the tools and the basis to go to the next step, I think you can really continue in this mode within 1 week, and do it the cycle over and over. But once you have given feedback, which is probably the necessary condition for them to go to the next step. And at that point, I think it's definitely help with motivation of the student, increases motivation.